Unit 6, let's go. Now I think it's only fair that I warn you here. Y'all are about to see some racism. And not like, oh my god, that's racist. But like systematic racism that is the predominant thought at the time. Like commonly accepted, steadfast, racist ideas that permeated the globe. You think the world's racist now? Let me introduce you to a little century known as the 19th century. So you've been warned. Today we review the rationales for imperialism. Rationale? That's a polite word, College Board. Like going up to a murderous bank robber and being like, what was your rationale for this crime spree? Anyways, the West. That's another one of those words. The West, aka the Western world, or Western civilization, unfortunately for you, is not just the west side of the map. But if you follow this little formula, you can find out what the West means. First, take a little Greco-Roman heritage, and then mix in some Christianity. Then, add in the ideas of reason from the scientific revolution and Enlightenment. Finally, sprinkle on top some Industrial Revolution, and you got yourself the West. Visually, it looks like this. Basically, it's the US, Canada, Western Europe, and Australia. Be careful here, there's a bunch of different variations on this, but this is kind of the general consensus. Now, Unit 6 is all about the West, using their new industrial might to take new territory. And today's about the rationale, or reasons, why the West does what the West does. So I'm gonna break these rationales down into a couple categories. First, the economic rationale. Now y'all are about to hear a lot of excuses as to why this happened. This is the real reason. The economic reason is the real one. Economically, the West is now either industrializing or industrialized. What do factories need? Raw materials. What else do factories need? Markets to sell their product. In class, I always call it M&Ms here. Markets and materials. Second, the religious rationale. Remember that one ingredient of the West, that little formula we just did? One of those was Christianity. Well, these Christians are using the rationale of converting people to Christianity and ending the remnants of the slave trade. In my class, we went over the story of British missionary David Livingstone getting lost in Africa. 3, remember that racist warning I gave you at the beginning? It's about to pay off here. I call this category the what had happened was category. When someone starts an excuse with what had happened was, you know some craziness is about to come out. These are straight up excuses. The first what had happened was is based on what they used to call science. And to be fair, this was breaking cutting edge science at the time. You're all familiar with Darwinism and survival of the fittest, right? You graduated 3rd grade science. Well, the Western imperialists took that to a whole new level. They looked at your non-Western culture like a scientist would look at the dodo bird. Remember this guy? A 3-foot-tall, flightless bird. Since it had no natural predators on the islands it lived on, it would just lay its eggs on the ground. No predators, no problem. But within 75 years of coming into contact with humans, the dodo bird was extinct. It couldn't survive. It was not the fittest. Well, to the West, that's your non-Western culture. India, your culture is the dodo. It will die out. China, your culture is the dodo. It will die out. You can't compete with the superior cultures of the West. Therefore, your culture will die out. Oh my God, it's hard to say this stuff out loud. Ugh. They called this social Darwinism and said that Western cultures would survive because they were fit and other cultures would not because they weren't, just like the dodo. See? Super racist. But there's one more what had happened was excuse. And this one is arguably the worst. The final rationale is something called white man's burden. The name comes from this Rudyard Kipling poem of the same name. The premise is simple. The West is here not because they want to take all your raw materials and secure markets for their industrialized economies. No, they're here to help. It's the West's duty, their burden to carry. They must civilize the world. We've seen how backwards all of the cultures out there were. It's a scientific fact. They're going to die out. So it becomes the white man's burden to share with these backwards people the greatest culture in the world. And it is a burden. It's not easy. It's not something someone takes on lightly. But luckily for you, non-Western world, the West is here to save you from yourselves. I feel gross even having to cover this racist garbage. But those were the prevailing rationales as to why the West is going out and conquering huge chunks of the planet in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Okay, so now we know about the why for Unit 6, the rationale. But what about the where? I'll see you tomorrow.